Guyana's largest trade fair, GuyExpo, was celebrated this year under the theme Transformation, Partnering for a Better Guyana. This week on Dorado Shines, you will hear directly from the agencies of the Ministry of Natural Resources and the Environment as they went on display at the Sophia Exhibition Complex.
Hello to all our viewers. We are here at GuyExpo 2014 at the booth of the Ministry of Natural Resources and the Environment. So come on, take a look and let's see what's going on inside.
What we're showcasing here today is value added, and value added in terms of maximizing the use of the timbers in Guyana. What we have here also is that we have a question and answer segment where we're asking persons questions on the timber industry in Guyana. For example, we're asking them to name 5 woods of Guyana. We're also asking them about the LCDS. We're also asking them about what is the value and the benefit of the low carbon development strategy, and we are also asking them the importance of forestry in Guyana and what do forestry mean to them. We're also asking them about the benefits that value added have to them in terms of clim drying in Guyana.
We're at the EPA booth here today promoting the anti-litter regulations. We have a litter unit that is established operating from the Environmental Protection Agency. Our main objective here today is to sensitize persons about the different offenses under the litter regulations, as well as how they can contact us to investigate litter complaints and issues of littering in their neighborhood. Some of the typical questions that we've received while at the exhibit so far: why are dump sites being seen or visible around the various parts of Georgetown? But what they do is they give their waste to vagrants to dispose of instead of authorized persons from the main city council or one of the private contractors. And what happens is these vagrants, they go and deposit the litter or deposit the waste in any vacant lot at the side of a street, and it's a form of business actually. So that's one of the typical questions we've received so far. One of our immediate expansion of our program that's occurring is we have a volunteer arm we are currently establishing for the litter unit, and the arm is looking at coordinating with NGOs, agencies under the Ministry of Natural Resources and the Environment, and interested members of the public. What we'll do, we'll have a training session, and persons will be empowered to be litter wardens and enforce the litter regulations.
This evening we've got the master plan for the new Guyana Zoo on display. Basically, we're moving ahead with dismantling the individual cage mentality and working towards a more natural ecosystem display. And the entire zoo is actually sectioned into 4 major zones: coastal wetlands, savanna, mountain highlands, and rainforest. And each is going to be as natural as an environment as possible for the animals that live in that environment. We've actually got a couple of updates. You'll notice here we've got the petting zoo, and that's actually nearing completion. We'll be featuring a lot of animals that you'll be able to feed in a very non-invasive setting, so to speak. We'll be featuring things like ponies and goats and guinea pigs and rabbits and things like that. We've already completed several projects on the zoo, such as raising the roadways and so on, but there's still quite a bit more to do, and we're hoping that corporate Guyana can come on board and help us to make it a reality. We've also got running on display a presentation of some of the projects that we've completed in the botanical gardens, the national park, and the zoo, and some of the projected images for what we'd like to see happen in the near future.
offer different services, mapping, land information and mapping, surveys, and land rental and leases. At the exhibition, what we're displaying is the steps for land lease. We also exhibit our maps and some of our surveying equipment. The major attraction, we are doing puzzles for members of the public, which is generating a lot of interest. It's a challenge. You have 3 minutes to fit up the map of Guyana. We're encouraging a lot of school children to take part in this. We're also doing a survey on the National Action Plan Alignment Project, to which we are getting support. One of the major things that persons are asking, how to acquire a lease with the Commission.
Arrived here, you would have noticed that we had quite a few people who are interested in the semi-precious stones. This is a value-added product from mining. These stones are cut and polished by the people right here in Guyana at the Guyana Geology and Mines Commission. There are amethyst, black pearl, there are green quartz, rose quartz, gabbro, gneiss. Most people come asking for amethyst and of course the love stone, which is a rose quartz. And so you'll find there is quite an interesting group of people who are interested not only in the stones but in finding out something a bit more about where they're from. We have quite a lot of those people coming through. And of course, we have the other part of what we have on display is our mercury-free technology and information. People are interested in finding out about a piece of equipment we have on display, and it's a centrifuge, and you can come and take a look at it. It is something that miners are interested in because it means that they can move from mercury to mercury-free. Behind me on the wall, there's a lot of information. I advise you on how you can move your mercury and recover it. There's a mercury retort on the table as well, and you can learn how to use that so you can burn your amalgam and recapture the mercury. Of course, more people are interested in the equipment and how they can get there very, very quickly.
Basically, we're trying to get people to understand who we are and what we're doing in Guyana, what our plans are. As you know, we've started a Karuni mine. It's called a Karuni project, actually. And our big theme is investing in Guyana. So you want Guyanese to understand where we're going. While we have not started mining as yet, we're now in the construction phase. We wanted Guyanese to see other jobs we've done in Argentina and Brazil, for example, to understand some of the ethics of our companies, especially as it relates to the environment, especially relates to safety, and especially as it relates to giving back in the countries that we work. One of the big things with Troy Guyana is that we strive to buy wherever possible as much as we can locally. And we've been doing that. Recently we bought the Doosan equipment and we did it through a local company as part of our Invest in Guyana mentality.
Guyana is making more lands and resources available for mineral production and investments in the natural resources sector. These initiatives are being pursued in keeping with the country's commitment to protect the environment. On October 7, the Ministry of Natural Resources and the Environment, in collaboration with the United Nations Development Programme (UNDP), hosted a policy workshop where a study on the impacts of investment in Guyana's extractive sector was presented and reviewed. The study was undertaken by the government with support from UNDP and was done in two parts. One aspect entailed the economic impact of foreign direct investment in the extractive industries in Guyana. The second aspect deals with the environmental impact of FDIs on the extractive industries.
We see this as an important tool in moving forward as we develop, and we want to develop a first-class extractive industry, learning from the lessons of others, but also ensuring that we have maximum benefit for all the people of Guyana. We live in a political age in Guyana, and perhaps in other parts, of suspicion and sometimes of unwillingness to fully comprehend and to understand what it is we're seeking to do. And one can appreciate the politics, but also we expect that in the interest of national development, those who are not involved in the political game, as it were, would step away and look at the whole scenario as to what is being done and what is being achieved in the interest of all the people of Guyana. And foreign direct investment and generally investment within the extractive industry, as in other sectors of the economy, is an area that our government has placed a lot of emphasis on. And we've always been cautious in the manner in which we pursue these investment opportunities. One, ensuring that we have the right investors, and how do we define having the right investors? The right investor is not defined by geographical origin, whether you're American, whether you're Canadian, whether you're Chinese, and there's this Chinese hysteria that is pumping up in Guyana, whether you're Indian, and sometimes you have the Indian hysteria too being pumped up by different interest groups, or whether you come out of Africa, or wherever your origin, having the right investor is more or less determined by one, looking at the proposals there are, ensuring that there's a full and unequivocal subscription to national laws, and thirdly, ensuring that the business at hand does justice in terms of the welfare of the country, but more importantly, ensuring that in its manifestation, development, and its utilization, that the future well-being of the country is not hampered in any way. And from time to time too, one of the common complaints investors would have, and I want to be a bit general, then I'll come back to foreign direct investors, is that perhaps we are too slow, or perhaps there are many too agencies that are involved, or perhaps the permitting process itself is too elaborate. And whilst it is our intention, and we have the president of the Guyana Manufacturers and Services Association and other private sector persons who would from time to time be involved in another process. We have a national competitiveness process, whereby one of the key objectives of that competitive process was reducing the time frame within which, and the red tape and the bureaucracy and all the other problems associated with doing business in Guyana. But that would be a common complaint you will have. And sometimes, you know, we ourselves, as policymakers, we would be a bit impatient at how things work. But what it tells us too is that having these checks and hearing these complaints is also a way in which one can see that the system is working, and the checks and the arrangements that we have in place are there for specific purposes. And so whilst we want investment within the country and within the extractive industry, we also insist that the required procedures and requirements are fulfilled. And yes, we have to do a better job to, in some instances, of facilitating and allowing these investment and these activities to take place. So in our choosing the right investment, we've looked at those as well as other features in this regard. But we are on the cusp, as you pointed out, but also we see our country at a very important stage, at a very critical stage in terms of turning that corner of expanded growth, expanded economic development, but also maximizing the opportunities that we have. And that is why we sought to engage UNDP in helping us, one, to understand what it is we've been doing. Because we can pat ourselves in the back, and you've generally given us good marks in what we've been doing. But we can pat ourselves and say, well, we know it right, we don't need any other perspective. But we decided that in the interest of, and the anticipation of expanded growth, as you pointed out, and those are just in some areas of the extractive industry, but if you look at the country as a whole, where we expect there are other growth poles in the national economy, we wanted to ensure that our engagement and what we're doing, particularly as it relates to foreign investment, that we are doing what is best for the country, we learn from the examples elsewhere, and as we move forward, we take a critical look at our policy and our policy instruments. You've listed a number of recommendations, and some of those recommendations we have already put some attention to, but we need to, as it were, to ensure that we are much more efficient in the implementation of those, and also have a sustained arrangement in place to so monitor and to ensure that there's adequate compliance and enforcement. But we thought that this type of study would, one, serve as a guide to policymakers, to the government, but also to be an opportunity to engage national as well as other international stakeholders too, in understanding the complexity, as well as understanding the opportunities that exist in terms of how do we advance and how do we move forward in managing foreign investment, particularly in this sector, a sector that is very sensitive from the social and the environmental aspects, as you've also pointed out in this regard. So the report itself, we hope, will be a catalyst as such, one for investors' confidence, also to ensure that nationally our own local investors themselves will have a better appreciation, but also other stakeholders will understand and be able to contribute to effective governance, because you listed the first recommendation, good governance of the sector. All of this is going to work for the benefit of the people, and we're going to derive the maximum impact. Good governance is important.
The Ministry of Natural Resources and the Environment is creating conditions for the responsible and sustainable exploitation of the country's natural resources. Operators are encouraged to mine with the environment in mind.
The workshop this morning is a follow-up from the first workshop which we had earlier this year on the inception, which we present to you what study would be, the methodology, and the outcome that we expect to have from this study. Over the last couple of months, we've been working to ensure that we achieve those outcomes as is set out in the terms of reference of the study. The international consultants have done the study in two parts, which one that looks at the economic impact of FDI on the extractive industries in Guyana, and the other that looks at the environmental impact on FDI on the extractive industries. The extractive industry, for the purpose of this study, is primarily the mining industry, the mining and metals industry of the Guyana's economy. And what we wanted to look at the impact of investment over time as it relates to foreign investment, private investment, local investment, and to make that distinction between what we consider as foreign investment, what we consider partnership investment, as against our local investment. As many of you, sector representatives and other stakeholders of the mining industry, you would know how, you would have seen over the last 10 to 15 years how the mining sector of this economy has changed over time, how it has had both positive and negative externalities towards the growth and development of regions, people, and the economy as a whole. It is our hope this morning that the findings of this study that was done over the last 2 months will give you a good understanding of how the mining industry has changed, how that investment has impacted on not just the economics or the environment of the economy and the specific sectors, but also on the well-being of those who are involved in the mining industry.
Polluting waterways and vegetation through mining activities is an offense. Be responsible. Protect the environment.
We are particularly keen because we are the Gold and Diamond Miners Association. And so we are interested in matters of parity with the other sections of the industry. And we have been looking to see what we can bring to the table with respect to the small and medium scale mining contribution. It is well known that very recently the local miners, gold miners particularly, produced a phenomenal number of ounces, 400 odd ounces of gold. 400,000 ounces of gold. And recently I was at a seminar, and what came to my attention was that the Guyana Gold Fields intends to produce 150,000 ounces along that order of scale, order of magnitude. OMI, when they were here, the most they produced was just over 250,000 ounces. So it's very clear in aggregate, the small and medium scale miners are probably equivalent to at least 3 large scale mines all at once. And so we are interested in looking at foreign direct investment, total national investment, export value, government revenue, GDP, and employment and wages. Now what we've discovered is that the foreign direct investment is a big number that is inserted over a narrow time frame. And very little is expended in country. And therefore the life of the mine becomes important, and the economic framework in which the mine operates is vital, because for small countries like Guyana, we don't have great industrial manufacturing. So we will not be selling big equipment to the miners. But we've been looking to get a lot of jobs, a lot of employment for our people. And so the matters of training and the matters of positioning Guyanese with the experience to be part of the mine becomes vital for us. And so we recognize that the foreign direct investment includes an initial period, maybe 3 to 10 years of exploration. OMI was about 12 years of exploration. Guyana Gold Fields reported there were about 50 years of exploration. And that exploration cost, Mr. Minister, is expensed. Of course, when there are calls for the small and medium scale miners to do more exploration, their exploration cost is not expensed for income tax purposes. And so we're looking to see the numbers with respect to the foreign direct investment. We know that the export value of the gold that the miners produce is quite high. And the numbers I saw was about 60% of the total exports of the country. And the government revenues, the income tax, and the royalty from the mining is fairly high. And of course the GDP numbers, the foreign direct investment improves the credit rating and so on of the country. But when it comes down below that level, what is available to us is employment and wages, and that is a small number at the moment. And so I would be interested to see what projection for employment and wages, what percentage of the impact that they could have, and how the gold and diamond miners could position, and the rest of the country, would position themselves the benefit from the foreign direct investment that comes to large-scale mining.
The scope of the study, like I said, it was, Bob has already mentioned this, it's been done over 3 months. It's focusing on the extractive sector. The lens that we're coming at this from is foreign direct investment. We're looking at large scale. Of course, there's a conversation about medium and small, because you can't do that in the context of Guyana in talking about mining. But the idea was to cover this from the perspective of saying, if you're going to get large-scale investment, how does that change the field of play?
So we have 2 schools of thought on foreign direct investment in impacts on mining. The proponents of foreign direct investment, as Masumud mentioned, would say that there's higher standards in terms of environmental compliance and environmental management systems. There's greater money involved for corporate social responsibility activities, so that would mean activities such as social investment in the communities impacted by mining. And to go into more detail about environmental management systems, that would mean perhaps more stringent requirements in terms of tailings management, emissions, worker health and safety, which of course is a very important consideration, particularly in the small and medium scale mining. And worker health and safety considerations tend to be more stringent for foreign companies. And finally, in general, pollution control and abatement, so this would mean resource efficiency, water management, GHG emissions, climate change adaptation, considerations for large companies. Now, the critics of foreign direct investment would also say that rather than necessarily raising standards, some of the environmental legislation in place in the country can sometimes be weaker than the host country standards, and so this can lead to a pollution haven situation. And this is then compounded by the fact that often in the host country, in this case of course Guyana, if enforcement capacity is then lower, even if the environmental management systems in place are more strict, there may not be the enforcement capacity to make sure that those environmental management systems are properly implemented and followed.
Check us out on the internet for this and every episode of Dorado Shines. Just go to YouTube, search for Dorado Shines and start watching, or like us on Facebook and receive instant updates. You've been watching Dorado Shines. Do join us again next week for another program. Until then, do remember that we all have a role to play in protecting the environment.